Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and this is a video for beginners, for people just getting in the community. We throw around terms and phrases that, I remember not understanding when I first joined the community. Now, I do expect even the veterans to watch, because I need you guys to help out in the comments, and I do appreciate you guys doing that for me. People in the comments, they ask questions, and sometimes you guys get to it before I do, and I really appreciate it. So thank you guys for backing me up and helping me out so much with the channel and being such huge supporters of Neeves Knives. Now, we're going to go through 5 terms. First off, a very easy one. What's the difference between a frame lock and a liner lock? So, a frame lock is a knife where the lock bar side is the frame. So, also, the benefits of a frame lock is that when you're holding it, you're actually making it stronger because you're squeezing the lock bar. This is the lock bar. The lock bar pushes over this way, and when you squeeze it, you're actually putting pressure that way. Now, in order for it to fail or disengage, it has to go this way. But if you're putting pressure on it, it's more difficult for it to slide out from underneath, right? So a frame lock is where the lock bar side is the scale. That is literally that side of the knife. So it's the frame of the knife. A frame lock. The lock is part of the frame. Now, a liner lock is where you have the liner, or the lock bar is inside the scales. That's why it's a liner. It's lining the inside. So it's a liner lock, lining the inside of the knife. Now, you might not be able to make it stronger by squeezing it, but it can be easier to use because with frame locks, and not always, but in a lot of cases, frame locks can be more difficult because you put pressure on the lock bar when you go to try to deploy it, and it could stop you from deploying it. You want to make sure you don't put your fingers on the lock bar when you deploy the knife, because that puts pressure on the detent. The detent is right here. This is a lock bar insert. We'll talk about that in a second. But the detent is that little ball right there. That little ball is the detent. And that's what locks the blade inside the liner or the frame. Now, by putting pressure right there, you're stopping it from being able to deploy. So you want to keep your fingers off that when you deploy it. Now, with a liner lock, you don't have to worry about that. But it also has its ups and downs. They all do. But that is the difference between a liner and a frame lock. Now, there's other options, like, say, this knife right here, which is actually a frame lock with an overlay. So we have it's kind of almost a liner lock, but it's technically still a frame lock. If you look, this is not a scale. This is not the scale of the knife. This is the scale of the knife. This is just an overlay sitting on the scale. So that's why this is still a frame lock with an overlay. Some people might call it a liner because you do get a lot of the benefits of a liner, like not squeezing the lock bar and things like that. But in reality, this is still a frame lock, and it just has an overlay. A knife like this is a sub-frame lock. So a sub-frame lock is where it is still a frame lock. I can still squeeze it and make it stronger, but the lock bar is actually screwed in from the inside of the scale. It's a different piece. So this is a steel lock bar, and this is aluminum. But this steel lock bar is screwed in from the inside. That's why it's a sub-frame lock. Well, then we have bolster locks. Let's talk about a bolster lock, because a bolster lock can be confusing too. A bolster lock is this right here. It's where you have the frame, right? But half of the frame is covered. So it's it's almost like a liner lock and a frame lock combo. So we see this is the frame right here, right? This is the frame lock. Now we have an overlay sitting on the handle covering most of the handle. Now, sometimes this could be reversed, and that's a reverse bolster lock. But in this case, we'll just talk about a bolster lock, which is where the bottom portion of the handle is covered by another material. Now, you can get the same benefits, not always, but in many cases, still the same benefits of a frame lock, of being able to make it stronger. But then you can also make it to where you don't push on the lock bar when you go to deploy it, because you have something to put your fingers on, you know, with the other material that covers the lock bar. So there's benefits and downfalls to them all, but that is a bolster lock where the handle material or the frame is covered halfway or majority up the blade, and the lock bar or the frame pokes out of the top. And like I said, there's the reverse bolster lock, where it's just flipped around. Inlays and overlays. I'll just break that down really fast. An inlay sets inside of a material, an overlay sits on top. Very simple. Like if I show this knife right here, this is an inlay. It's inside the handle. That's an inlay. So an overlay would be kind of like this one right here. It sits on top. It's not inside of it. Then we're talking about this carbon fiber right here. Now, what is a lock bar insert? A lock bar insert is where you're using usually a titanium material. Titanium is extremely strong, but it's not hard. It's lightweight for how strong it is, corrosion resistant, magnetic proof, all those good things. However, it's not always the best for a lock face. Now, in some cases, you will have titanium lock faces. They'll be carbonized, or sometimes just the geometry of the lock bar and the lock face is really good. But lots of titanium, you know, locking knives like titanium liners or titanium frames have a steel lock bar insert. You will hear that a lot. This is the steel lock bar insert. That's the screw holding the steel lock bar insert in. This is a titanium frame right here. Now, if I turn it, you will look and see the steel insert inside there. See how you can see the insert, and the detent ball is actually in that insert. I believe it's inside the insert, and then you can see the screw head right there coming out. That's the screw head holding it in from this side. So we have the screw holding in the steel lock bar insert. Now what that does is it makes steel on steel contact. So you have less likely of a chance of it getting lock stick. And, you know, it basically not over traveling over time and things like that, because steel it can be incredibly hard, you know, so steel on steel contact will create less friction, you know, where it doesn't slowly move over from tearing the other material apart because one's soft and one's hard. You know, it makes it a stickiness, right? Now, in some cases, that can be a benefit. That's why some people do like titanium frame locks without a lock bar insert, because in a lot of cases, they can be stronger. Because since it does have the softer material and the harder material, it makes it stick. So you might have a less likely of a chance of it slipping, you know, where the lock bar slips out from underneath the scale. But lots of knives are using the steel lock bar inserts, and as long as the geometry is good, they can work better and last longer over time. And then if you ever have an issue, you can always just have the steel insert replaced. Now, what is an over travel stop? Now, there's all different kinds of over travel stops, but basically an over travel stop is this. Let's look inside this knife. You will see, oh, this one's on top. This one's not a good one to show you. Let me grab a different one. When we look inside here, you will see that little pin right there. See that little pin? It's right in the middle, right there. This little pin right there. That is hanging over just a little bit. Now, what that's doing is you can also see it right here, too. Shine some light. You can see it right there. See that little piece? That's that little piece we were looking at back here. Now, that stops the lock bar from going too far this way. See, you can see it hitting right there. It's hitting, and it's usually connected to the steel lock bar insert. Now, when I'm pushing this way, it stops me from bending it too much. Now, some knives don't have it. It's not a big deal, but it does add a little bit of a precautionary, or it can stop you from over time and over a long time pushing this lock bar over too far and making it less strong from bending it. Now, sometimes you'll see them on the outside like this right here. Now, this knife, it doesn't have one on the inside, so this is actually the over travel stop. And in this case, it also can benefit lefties because you can put your finger on it when you deploy this knife, like we were talking about before, where you squeeze the lock bar and it makes you lock yourself out. So sometimes you will see them on the outside. And sometimes you might hear them be called LOCKBAR stabilizers. Now, a LOCKBAR stabilizer is the same thing, but a lot of times you'll see that like kind of in the middle. It's a circle. This is a beta lock. So a beta lock is made after I deploy it. I can push that up and it stops me from being able to disengage the knife. If I want to be a little harder on the knife and I'm scared that the frame might disengage because maybe I'm not squeezing it, maybe I'm using it and I'm not holding my lock bar or something, or maybe I'm just being overly strong with the knife, I can engage that and now it won't disengage. But most knives don't come with that because the lock bar should work really good just by itself. And with folders, you might not want to be using the knife so hard that you might need it. As long as, your lock bar should be strong enough to hold up the knife for the tasks it's being used for, but you will see them from time to time. But that is what a lock bar stabilizer and a lock bar over travel stop is. It's the same thing. Over travel stop and stabilizer is basically the same thing. It just stops you from bending the lock too far. Now, last one, deep carry clips. Deep carry clips. Now, I remember being confused about this one myself, because there's so many different types of clips. There are just so many different versions. Now, a deep carry clip. What is a deep carry clip? I'm going to show you a few of them so you can see the similarities. So a deep carry clip is a clip that usually screws in and then is bent over and around, basically so that it can go to the deepest point when you put it in your pocket. It can go very deep. This would be a non-deep carry clip. See, it's not deep. And you see how the screws are at the top and then it bends over. It doesn't loop over like this one does, how it loops over. However, these are not always deep. So just because it's a deep carry clip doesn't mean it carries deep carry. So remember that. It does not have to carry deep just because it is a deep carry clip. Just the clip itself is what is deep carry. This would be a milled pocket clip. It's milled out of titanium. Now, you will see titanium clips sometimes deep carry, but that's what this is. It's a milled clip. The reason why it's milled is because something like this can be stamped. Something like this can be stamped out. Something like this has to be milled by a CNC or by a machine. It can't be just punched out and then bent. So this is also a deep carry clip. You see how it loops over? Let's check out a couple more. Another deep carry clip. You see how it loops over? Now, even if it was down here, it would still be a deep carry clip. It would just be a deep carry clip that doesn't carry deep. Here's a non-deep carry clip. You see, screws are at the top and it just bends over. It's just a bent spring pocket clip. Here is a titanium milled clip again. It's too thick to be stamped out. It has to be milled. Another deep carry clip, just a little different. So there you guys go. I hope that makes a lot of sense. And hopefully I taught some people some things today. And I appreciate everybody watching, and I appreciate everybody who helps down in the comments. For those that do have questions, just know that if you ever do have questions, don't be afraid to ask them down in the comments. There's an amazing community that will help you with anything you need. I love you guys. Peace.